In this video, we're going to be taking a look at my Elvis Presley UK soundtrack LPs all the way from 1958 through to the early 1970s. I've been able to date these records fairly accurately thanks to this book here, Elvis UK. This book has been out of print for many years, but you can actually buy it now as a flip book, which means you can read it online. All right, the first one I've got to show you is this one here, Loving You. I've shown this one before. This one was actually made in 1960. The date is printed on the back of the cover, and it's also, the record itself is also dated 1960 in the book we just looked at here. That album was available until 1963, and then it was deleted. And the head of the UK Elvis Presley fan club, his name was Albert Hand, he pestered RCA to release the album along with the songs Flaming Star and Summer Kisses, Winter Tears, which had never been released in the UK. And the result was this album here, which came out in 1965. And you can see that they've chosen to emphasize the titles of the songs, Flaming Star and Summer Kisses. In fact, that's the title of the album, over the photograph of Elvis. I think probably the cover would have looked more striking if they'd used a larger version of this picture and just used a smaller text. The album has the 8 songs that were on the 10-inch LP, 7 from Loving You, plus True Love, and it also has the 4 songs from the By Request EP. These 2 songs here, and It's Now or Never, and Are You Lonesome Tonight. The running order is a little bit strange, especially side 1. You get It's Now or Never in the middle of a load of tracks from Loving You. Not sure why they did that. This is quite a collectible album. There are about 3 or 4 different versions of it. There's also an orange label version, which I'd quite like to get one day. And this one that I have here is the original version from 1965. The next album to be released was King Creole. This is an early one. The pasted on back cover. This one I actually found in Japan, and they were still using this label design at the time. I do have another copy of King Creole. This is from 1969. By that point, there were no longer any photographs on the back. And this one has an orange label. And this is what they call a small orange label, because the size of the label is a little bit smaller than standard. They used that one for about a year, so that dates it to 1969. The first soundtrack of the 60s was, of course, GI Blues, and this is an original copy here. This is a mono copy. Fully laminated sleeve with these cutaways at the top. And it has a flat spine. You can't read the text along the spine, which is kind of inconvenient. But then again, this kind of cover didn't suffer from laminate bubbling so much. The laminate is still perfect on this copy. So that one's an original, and there's the label. I also have a stereo copy from the same year. Almost identical cover. And the labels are similar, except it says Living Stereo at the top. Most collectors of UK Elvis LPs will know that the stereo albums from the 60s are actually more difficult to find than the mono versions. The next soundtrack album, was Blue Hawaii. This is also a stereo copy. That's the back. Same label design as the stereo copy of GI Blues. And this next one is one of the nicest albums that I've ever bought, actually. This is an original mono copy. I found this one in Japan. I paid through the nose for it, but then again, I figured I'm never going to find a copy like this ever again. So I just bought it when I had the chance. Looks as clean as it did when it came out of the shop. Monocopy. I've got 2 copies of the next soundtrack album, which was Girls, Girls, Girls. This is actually the second one that I bought. Found this one here in Japan. Nice clean copy. This is the original. And this time they've changed the label design. Small RCA logo with RCA Victor at the top. The first copy of Girls, Girls, Girls I bought was actually this one here. This is another monocopy. The cover is identical to the one I've just seen, but the label is an orange one. This one dates from 1971. If you saw my soundtrack album ranking and reviewing series, you'll know that I'm a big fan of this album here. It happened at the World's Fair, and the early copies of this came with a fully laminated sleeve, front and back sides both laminated. This is a stereo copy. And this one is even nicer. This is a mono copy from the same year, 1963. Also fully laminated. Most of these albums have still got the original inner sleeves, which to me shows that they were probably well looked after. I've got one more copy of World's Fair, and that's this one here. By this point, the cover is no longer laminated. And this one is actually from 1965 with the red spot label. I've just got one copy of the next soundtrack, which was Fun in Acapulco. I think some of the copies of this album came with fully laminated sleeves as well, but this one is not laminated on the back. And this one is actually from 1967, red dot label. The next one is Kissing Cousins. This is a mono copy. I do have a stereo copy, but it's pretty much trashed, so I won't bother bringing that one out. It's a nice clean copy. It's actually been written on at the top there, on the back cover. But ironically, I think writing on covers sometimes shows that the person who owned the album actually cared a lot about it. So there's a name on there, Sheila, 1964. She's written number 117, so she must have had a nice big record collection. And then it's also got the numbers 32/2D. If you're not from the UK and you buy a UK album and you can see numbers like that on the back cover, then don't worry about it. In most cases, it was actually written by the shopkeeper. It just shows the price of the album, 32 shillings and 2 pence. In this case, it seems to have been written by Sheila, because it's in the same hand and the same pen. So by that point, all the new albums were being released with this red dot label design, which they used for a few years. The next album is Roundabout. I just have this one mono copy of this album. And this is one of the first albums I bought when I decided to start collecting records again about 20 years ago. And the reason why I started to collect records again was because my wife and I moved in together, and she had a record collection, and I started looking through them, and I realized that I missed owning records, so that's why I started to buy some again. Next album was Girl Happy. This is a stereo copy. And when I started thinking about what albums I wanted to buy, I remembered that I really liked the UK albums that I used to own, original UK albums. So the first thing I did was buy a set of 5 original UK albums, and that Roundabout album was part of those 5. And in fact, the second album I showed as well, Flaming Star and Summer Kisses, that was also part of those 5 LPs. Next one, very quickly, I'll show you is Girl Happy Mono. Same label design. This one you can see has gone a bit white at the top here, and this sometimes happens with these UK covers. I think it's caused by moisture getting under the laminated surface. I've got a couple of other ones like that. So the next one was Harem Holiday, and this is an original stereo copy. So the original Black Label copies had a mistake on the back cover there. Mirage, somewhere around there, is spelt Mirago. And this one is also black. And it's very difficult to see the word stereo on this label. Near the top there, it says stereo orthophonic high fidelity, whereas it reads new orthophonic high fidelity on the mono labels. So they changed the design of the stereo labels briefly, just for a couple of albums. This is a mono copy, really nice clean copy here. And this one actually has Mirage on the back cover. And that's because it's a later pressing. This one dates from 1970. So it's on the orange RCA Victor label. The next album was Frankie and Johnny, not everyone's favorite. This is a mono copy. And the mono records never specified mono. And this is the stereo copy. And like the Harem Holiday album, it's difficult to spot the word stereo, but it's there just beside the logo. Stereo orthophonic high fidelity. The next album is one that was in the charts the day I was born, August 1966, Paradise Hawaiian Style. Stereo copy here. This is another one of those albums which is fully laminated front and back. And by this point they'd gone back to showing the word stereo prominently on the labels. And I also have a mono copy of this one. Again, it's laminated on both sides. And there's the label. The next one is California Holiday, also from 1966. This was also part of that set of 5 albums that I bought when I started getting back into record collecting again about 20 years ago. This is a mono copy. And this one also has numbers on the back there, 32/7, 32 shillings and 7 pence. So prices of records hadn't really gone up very much between 1964 and 1966. And I was lucky enough to find a very clean stereo copy of this album here in Japan. I got this from the same dealer who sold me the nice copy of Blue Hawaii. Nearly there. The next one was Double Trouble, mono copy from 1967. And still, even as late as 1967, the mono albums are easier to find than the stereo albums. I do have a stereo copy of Double Trouble, that's this one here, but it's not an original. It's actually from, I believe, 1970 on the orange label. There was actually no mono orange label version, as far as I know. However, with that Harem Holiday LP that we looked at, that was a mono one from 71, and there was no stereo orange label version. Next album was Clambake, mono. I also have a stereo one. One of these I found in Japan. I can't remember if it was the mono one or the stereo one. And they've gone back to the stereo orthophonic high fidelity label design. It's difficult to see the word stereo on here. And the last Elvis soundtrack LP was, of course, Speedway. This copy here will be perhaps of more interest to UK collectors, as this is the stereo version. Black label, stereo visible again very clearly on the left side. And perhaps of more interest to American collectors is the monocopy. However, this version is nowhere near as rare as the American mono pressing. My particular copy is actually from 1969. It's an orange label with the first orange label design, or the small orange label as it's called. So those are my Elvis Presley UK soundtrack albums. There are a few others that I'm looking for, mainly stereo ones from the mid-60s. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.